Hello, it's Cryptolyze. I hope you are well this Saturday 25, November 2023. We're meeting today to talk crypto, to talk BTC, but not only that. We will also talk about Binance. This is an important fact that we had this week, which is really striking for me. For the crypto industry, we must understand that it has a short-term impact, yes, but above all, a long-term one. And we will understand why. I'm going to give you my vision. I'm going to share my thoughts with you. You will see that everything is not rosy, and there are positives and negatives. We'll start right away. As a reminder, you always have the possibility of having free access to the educational course, which is a 60-hour training course worth €400, which allows you to learn blockchain, crypto, investment, technical analysis, trading, everything to become profitable. Through 130 videos, 400 pages of guides, quizzes to find out where you are in your progress, and all for free. To have access to this lifelong training, simply use the platform of one of our partners. Everything is explained in the comments and descriptions. I will come back to Binance and the judgment that took place. So in this case, if you haven't followed, Binance and CZ, therefore the director of Binance, had already been prosecuted for some time for a certain number of issues linked to the financing of terrorism, linked to money laundering money, also linked to the conservation of user funds in which there was not necessarily really a separation between the two, overall a form of compliance. And that's really very important because it's something that's been going on since 2018. We had already had several moments in which we had pressure building and it was accelerating, particularly with what happened last year with the crash of FTX, which really hurt, and which also put pressure on the USA to offer regulation around crypto, and they went much further than that. The fact that we have a settlement now means that CZ must leave Binance. Binance must pay more than $4 billion in fines, must withdraw from the USA, and must for 5 years have a regulator, someone who is linked to the American Department of Justice, which will be behind Binance, and which will ensure that Binance respects the rules. And that is extremely important because we are going to go much further because it is also requested that all of Binance's information are accessible to the American government and to the various American institutions, whether it is the SEC, whether it is the Department of Justice, whether it is all the different actors in the USA. And what is important is also the declaration that was made when the announcement was made. Already there was no SEC during the announcement. Very important. All right? There were all the departments, there were a lot of people, but there was no ASEC. So that means that the deal that was made is a deal that is outside of ASEC. It is really linked to the American Department of Justice on charges that are criminal. All right? In which there we have an impact, yes, financial, in which we have $4.3 billion to release at the level of Binance. All in all, it's done pretty well. But what is important to see is that we have a settlement which excludes SEC. So behind it is possible to once again have SEC arriving from behind, and knowing that they will arrive with all the documents linked to Binance, because Binance now is generally an open door to the Americans. What is also interesting to take into consideration, and we keep that well, keep in mind everything I am giving you, you will see everything will come together little by little in relation to that, and to explain a little to you. My vision in general that I have on what is happening, is it positive or negative? Next to it, we will end up with all of the Binance information that is accessible. This implies that Binance, which was a major player during the last bull run, will provide access to all the information from the listings they have had, from the investments they have had, from the transactions that they had. I can tell you that there will be a lot of files that will be made available to the SEC and the Department of Justice, and that there are a certain number of cryptos that are starting and projects that are starting. I'm thinking of understanding that it's going to be very, very complicated, whether it's the cryptos, whether it's behind the different institutions, the next on the list. There's a good chance it's Justinson. We're not going to hide that we've done all the big names then. At some point, we're going to knock on Justinson's door. It is even very likely to have, given the interconnections that we have had between Binance and Bybit, that we are also Bybit, which takes a cartridge behind. We have Kraken, which is starting to be attacked. I think that you have to understand that Binance was at the center of everything, to finance a lot of things, and to really help in setting up the last bull run, and all the projects that are launched behind it can be continued. behind for a characterization of securities by the SEC. What is missing is the different means, the different proofs. Well, that's actually going to happen with the opening of Binance. And what I like is this title given here, which is a glimmer of hope for the crypto industry. And it's true that the market is considering this because currently we had a fear that Binance was the next FTX. Clearly, I too had this fear, saying, be careful, it's centralized, you never know. The role of BNB in the valuation of Binance is very substantial. We are still on a pattern that is very similar. Are we also dealing with embezzlement, as was the case with FTX? I don't think so. I didn't think so. But we always had a risk that was real. They're the fact of having something which proves that this is not the case, and that there is a legal decision and a regulation. And bringing Binance into line means that here we have a hope that is arriving by saying, okay, that means that we have proof that Binance is not going to collapse behind, and that yes, they are forced to withdraw from the United States, but that Binance is not going to collapse. What is true is that we have removed this sword of Damocles that we had above our heads, and that is why we also have very good breathing. On the other hand, what we also need to understand is that it will be very complicated in the next 5 years for Binance. For what? Because we are bound by American regulations. And given what they said during the announcement, which I quote you in text message, is that there is no limit to the application of American law. No matter where you are, if you have American customers or you speak to American customers, you can be sued no matter where you are. And that is very, very important. It's the American approach. And therefore, it also means that no matter where we are, if we ever had an American client, we can find ourselves in the same approach as Binance, and that Binance currently is proof that we can bring down anyone, anytime, and the strength of the Americans in their regulation has imposed their law no matter where it is. And so that also means that the innovation aspect will be relatively complicated. There will be much fewer risks which are taken, and keep that in mind because I'm going to explain to you the impact that it will have on the next bull run and what will be different from the previous bull run. However, to finish this really very strong parenthesis on Binance, we must understand something else, which is that we currently have proof that rapid development will not work because I am convinced that Binance will decline in the next 5-10 years. Because that the fact that it is blocked under American regulation, without being able to address the Americans, also implies that they will have a lot of difficulty in releasing new projects, new products, or products with high added value. And the same, I think it will be very complicated to have a banking license, something they wanted at one point. I remind you, a year and a half ago, this is what was ruled. And once again, given that they are under American control without being able to address the American market, also means that the rest of the world will have a hard time telling themselves that they are going to use Binance. And so it's going to be really complicated, I think, in the next bull run, in the years to come, for the development of Binance. I'm not saying they're going to disappear completely, but I think their days as leaders are over, and I think we're going to see other actors coming along. Other players that we now know a little more about because we still have players who are directly linked to the various American managers. We have BlackRock, for example, which is Fidelity, which is launching, as a reminder, their ETFs soon, so we know it's confirmed that it's going to happen. We don't know the date, but in any case, we know that it's going to happen this way. Perhaps there will be a refusal in order to have an acceptance later, but in all cases, we know that that will happen. We will have pro-American players who will arrive on the market with regulations already effective and a financial weight capable of assuming the weight of the regulations. The weight of compliance. Therefore, the fact of respecting the rules and proving that we respect the rules is a monumental cost to get started, and that is why crypto had so much capacity for evolution and innovation. It is because there was not this weight of compliance, something which may change drastically during the next bull run, and I will explain to you why. So already on this, we retain 3 points and we are going to attack the rest. You will understand why. 1. The regulations are rather positive. The fact that Binance is accused and that it is settled is rather positive for the entire crypto market in the short term. This means that we have here the sword of Damocles of the fall of Binance which disappears. Okay, that's a positive point. Negative point. This implies that all the projects which have gone through financing linked to Binance, which can be qualified as securities by the SEC, they are not good at all at the moment. I can tell you that There are big drops beating from their foreheads. Third case is that the Binance exchange behind it will certainly lose its leading position in the following years and gradually decline because they are under American governance without being able to exploit the American banking license or even exploiting the American market, which means that they are stuck between two and it will be very complicated. What impact will this clearly have on BTC? Already in terms of weekly closing, we see that we have had another week which is rather positive. We are here in a monthly closing because next week we will have the closing of the month. But we see that we have a month which is rather positive, while on the fence. Weekly we are on something which is also positive, but we are not breaking the 38,000. We are still in our objectives of one of this first bullish expansion and on this retracement. So 37,600, we went for the liquidity. We went to look for a part of imbalance which was already present. We still have our target of 1,618, which is at 43,600 between 42 and 45,000 overall. And we could even project ourselves further and say to ourselves that we could really seek superior liquidity and go get all this pool of liquidity, which was precisely at the beginning of 2022, in agreement with all the psychological ideology, which was to go precisely not to break the lowest and to be in a master cycle, and that we wasn't going to have a bear market. And obviously we had Terra Luna, we had Celsius, and then we really had the bear market with lateralization. But therefore we have a large pool of liquidity, which is here. We has a big incentive to go higher. We know these are our targets that we have had for some time. Even if we arrived at the 1-1, it is something that we have here. So we have a form of instability in terms of market psychology, where we can clearly see that it has been 2 weeks where we are in a form of pure consolidation. So understand that the upward movement that we have had here is mainly linked to ETFs. And that I'm going to make a video for you tomorrow on purpose to avoid making this video too long, to explain to you clearly what happened at the level of GBTC, at the level of Grayscale, what is currently happening. Move to the ETF level. And my general opinion on what will happen once we have the validation of the ETFs and the manipulation that is certainly underway in relation to Grayscale, not necessarily in relation to BlackRock. And I will explain to you why in the video of tomorrow 8:30. Nevertheless, in the weekly closing, what is interesting to see is that here we have a brand that is being made. And here it is seen much more when we go daily. We see that we have the arrangement in place. We had here the phase of acceleration and rupture, a phase of consolidation which was rather bullish. And there we really have the simple lateralization phase in which we sought liquidity at the bottom, liquidity at the top. There we are really in the implementation of rather simple and structural arranging. We can clearly see that we had a liquidity crisis with Thanksgiving. And what is interesting to see here is the general reflection, because we have the news from Binance which has arrived. We have the news from Binance which has arrived and which gives us this lateralization, okay? We have the confrontation of the rumor of validation of ETFs versus the impact of Binance. If the news was that positive, we would have simply torn up the entire 38,000 zone in GT. We can see it clearly. We went to look for the 38,000. We went to look for this block of liquidity here, this big wall of liquidity. We went to look for it once, twice, 3 times. We didn't make any short squeeze. Many thought, myself included, that when we were going to break this level, we were going to soar to 42,000 because we were in an upward impulse, and carried by catalyzing news like the fact that, that's it, the sword of Damocles of Binance disappears. We should have had an element in GT. Want catalyst at the course level to get the 42,000 something we didn't get. And this is where the consideration of the impact of Binance and all the preamble that I gave you to this video plays a role. It is that we do not have here precisely a weight, a cement screed which is being made on the lateralization of the course, and that yes, we can still have an acceleration on the 42,000, but that the pressure linked to American regulations for all cryptos on SUM and GT, something that is going to be global because they don't just have access to Binance US, they have access to Binance. CZ does not come from Binance US. He has never been the president of Binance US. He is from Binance. And it is really important to understand the differentiation, and I think that there we are more about a representation and the implementation place of a crazy resistance at the level of 38,000, which will not be a resistance of liquidity, but which will be a fundamental resistance on the realization of what could and got happen at the level of Binance. And I think that we are likely to have the answer by the end of the year on what is happening. As a reminder, we are going to close the monthly next week. We are going to arrive in the month of December. A month of December in which we have a historic drop in volatility, in which we have a form of breathing. And on that, for me, I think we will get the answer fairly quickly on the course. Are we going to go get the 42,000 and then take a breath and retest? Are we going to have a bull run right away? I am not in this perspective. You know me. We have a flow which is currently bullish. We are taking advantage of this flow. It is something which is beneficial for the entire ecosystem. We are in a pre-UL run for me, and still in this notion of pre-UL run. We will at a given moment have a breath of the market, whether in a form and GEAT of lateralization. It is not said that the breathing of the market is in a form of retracement despite all the imbalances that we have, but it could very well be a form of lateralization for a certain time before having the acceleration. Okay, with a breakout, retest, and bullish acceleration. So we can very well have this approach. There are several types of breathing, and the market will show us the one it prefers in relation to all the news that we have, to all of the classic market. And that's why tomorrow's video is very important, to understand what happened in 2021, the role of Grayscale in relation to 2021, and the role of Grayscale in relation to the validation of its fund in ETF. The impact that it's going to have for their BTC, the impact that it's going to have in relation to the market in general, and what can happen currently in terms of manipulation in relation to that. Because once again, Grayscale has the habit of manipulating. If you don't know that, really watch tomorrow's video, 8:30. You will really understand everything that is happening, and in any case, my hypotheses in relation to that. In any case, personally, the advantage of this week is that we are validating here a form of uncertainty. We are also validating a consolidation. It is normal after an upward acceleration, as we were able to see. See here to have a form of consolidation. Consolidation like that in a bullish jack? We are not positive that is not positive. Something that lateralizes like that is positive. Whether for a second acceleration, whether for a break, bearish. The fact of having a consolidation in ranging allows for a compression in terms of liquidity and allows you to be able to structure a bullish wave. Do we have an answer now? No. When we are in a lateralization, we have no answer. There is no vocation to have an answer. It is because we have market uncertainty. What we must do is prepare for different eventualities. What we are going to look for is two things. It is one, a rupture, bullish, and a consolidation above the level of 38,000. Something we failed here, we actually strengthened equity. We went for equity here. There we reject. And we are in the process of consolidating below, okay? There we have a first indication of potentially going for the bottom of the range. What are we going to look for in relation to that? We're going to look for a break here from the previous levels to consolidate below and accompany the lower part, okay? To then potentially look for a bullish breakout. Is there any point in releasing it now? That means that I'm going to put myself in opposition to the total market. I don't think so. There the flow is still bullish, and will remain so as long as we don't have a break here in the pattern. Something that we can see with a rupture of this level, in which we could look for this level here and see a reaccumulation and start again. Or break, consolidate, and at that moment look much lower. But currently we have no sign of that, whether at the level of order flow or at the level of liquidity. And we see that we still have a form of weakening of the bullish momentum. That does not mean that we are in a bearish momentum. It does not mean that we are becoming bearish. That is not that at all. It means that we need to lateralize for a certain time, the time to restructure and take the time to regain momentum and compress the liquidity that is currently to do. The news from Binance, which could have been a bullish or bearish catalyst, was not. And that also implies that it is not the essential element that we are expecting. The essential element is linked to BTC ETFs, whether from Grayscale, whether from BlackRock. And the question is this going to be a bullish catalyst or bearish? I'll give you the answer tomorrow, 8:30. Besides, speaking of tomorrow, don't forget we're celebrating the channel's 2 years. And yes, November 27, it will be the channel's 2 years. So we're preparing for that by doing November 26. So tomorrow, 26 November, at 20, a live from 1-2. We will see depending on how we behave among ourselves. If we are happy, if we are not happy, if you have a lot of questions. I have a fairly busy schedule, but the goal is also for there to be a lot of interaction. Prepare your questions. We will be happy to answer them. I will answer all your questions, whether on my vision, on my management, on everything that happens. It is with pleasure that I will see you tomorrow, 20, on YouTube, for a live performance from 2 years old.